In Russian waters, a destroyer quickly discovered Captain Joe's forward submarine. Without hesitation, the destroyer launched a massive barrage of anti-submarine rockets, clearly aiming to destroy the submarine completely. Captain Joe decisively ordered the release of a rescue buoy and instructed the crew to evade at full speed. In the next moment, Soviet rockets exploded around the submarine, shaking it violently. The crew gave their all to minimize the damage and keep the vessel operational. As the assault continued, Captain Joe ordered the release of a decoy. While one torpedo detonated harmlessly, another torpedo was still closing in fast. Considering the dire situation, Captain Joe briefly contemplated counterattacking the destroyer. However, knowing the captain of the destroyer was still aboard, he abandoned the idea of retaliation. After confirming that the seabed was muddy, Captain Joe ordered the submarine to dive quickly. His exceptional combat experience proved invaluable. The muddy seabed not only concealed the submarine but also provided cover against the incoming torpedo. Meanwhile, Admiral Ace received word of the situation and immediately sensed something was amiss. If an American submarine were sunk near a Russian naval base while the Russian president was aboard, the world would likely believe the US had initiated an act of war by attempting to kidnap or kill the Russian president. Such an accusation would ignite catastrophic consequences. Acting swiftly, Admiral Ace ordered the US North Asia Fleet to raise its alert level and move closer to Russian waters. Both naval and air forces entered a tense standoff, making the prospect of war between the superpowers seem inevitable. Captain Joe's submarine had suffered heavy damage, rendering all torpedo tubes inoperable. At that critical moment, a Russian destroyer spotted the submarine and turned sharply to prepare for a full-scale attack. Amid the mounting tension, Captain Joe recalled the words of his commander. With his experience and calm demeanor, he knew the stakes were higher than ever. Captain Joe and his crew braced for what could be their final stand. Captain Joe was informed that the soldiers aboard the destroyer were all personally trained by him. This knowledge gave him a glimmer of hope. Acting quickly, Captain Joe requested a communication link with the destroyer. He called out the crew members' names one by one, urging them to reconsider their actions and not attack. Hearing their captain's familiar and trusted voice, the soldiers on board defied the orders of the acting commander and ceased their offensive actions. Through this courageous act of rebellion, Captain Joe successfully averted disaster and bought the submarine a brief reprieve. Meanwhile, the Russian High Command received intelligence about the unfolding situation and decided to intervene directly. They issued an order to cease fire against Captain Joe's submarine and demanded a thorough investigation into the events. Simultaneously, US forces were poised to retaliate if any further aggression occurred, further escalating tensions. The fragile situation between the superpowers reached an unprecedented level of tension. In the midst of this turmoil, Captain Joe's submarine continued to struggle with significant operational challenges as its damaged systems faltered. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the submarine functional under immense pressure. With immediate danger temporarily avoided, Captain Joe and his crew could only hope that the diplomatic standoff would resolve peacefully. They knew that any misstep or provocation could plunge the world into chaos. As the damaged submarine drifted in uncertainty, the crew braced themselves for what would come next, knowing they had narrowly escaped catastrophe.